Think Matthew is today, and we got some really great options.
My vote would be that he's going to Baton Rouge to be on Lane Kiffin's staff.
What's his title?
Some type of data analyst. He get to be on the field with it too, so he look more important.
Just Chicken tender specialist.
Yeah. Give him some gear. Give him one of the headsets.
Yeah, he's definitely wearing a headset.
Yeah.
He's not saying anything into it, but
right. Yeah.
Can you imagine Matthew in a GM type of role? He's like Joe Dumas with the two phones. Can't turn them on. That'd be great.
Incredible. It looks like
Younghoe Koo.
Younghoe Koo replacement is the leading option.
To be fair, Younghoe Koo, his kicking performance last night, the one man in America that would surpass would be Matthew Berry, who would have stubbed his toe, but at a further place back.
Yelling in agony.
Like 5 yards back.
Yeah, exactly.
And blaming the turf.
Yes, exactly.
Yes,
looking down on the turf. Yeah.
Who didn't cut this patch of grass?
Yeah, exactly.
The excuse alert.
Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Happy Hour. Connor Rogers, Jay Croucher, and look who it is. His gracious return, Matthew Berry. Hello, Matthew.
Greetings from Orlando, Connor. How are you? I see it's apparently Jersey Wednesday.
That's right.
It's been replaced by Tracksuit Friday, or replacing that. I'm in a hotel room in beautiful Orlando, Florida. So you can see I'm wearing my Cheshire Cheer Dad hat.
Cheer Daddy.
As Cheshire Junior Cheer has once again made it to the national finals of the American Youth Cheerleading Association, or whatever, the AYC, the national finals, the competition. We won locals. We won first place in the state of Connecticut. We placed in the Northeast region, and so now we are here in Orlando competing for a national title. And I'm here for the week, excited to see my daughters compete, and thank you to NBC for allowing me to come watch my kids tumble and stunt, as they say.
Okay, tumble and stunt indeed. No, that's what they say. But no, good luck to the girls, Matthew. Good luck to you. Connor, the chat started off hot. So we started the show 2 minutes late. It wasn't exactly backup producers Pete's fault. But to hear him, it was very much...
The bus got ran over him, though.
The way I would describe it as K-Gemma, lol, backup Pete, you got to put down the donuts and start the show. Yeah, backup producer Pete, a.k.a. Chief Wiggum. But I would describe it was basically like Pete trying to start the show. It was like the docking scene in Interstellar, but completely the opposite. It didn't dock.
With no tars.
Yeah, no tars.
Yeah.
It's that scene without tars.
Yeah, so you can imagine how it would have gone. Here we are.
I'll say this. You know me. My favorite sport in the world is driving the bus over backup producer Pete. But in this case, it was actually not his fault, chat, for us starting late. It was I had a beautiful backdrop, seeing the outside of beautiful Orlando, Florida, and actually where I'm staying at a Universal property. We're on the one of the hotels at Universal Studios because I'm a company man, and so I thought it was like this beautiful backdrop, and you could see the park in the background, the whole thing, but just there was too much lighting. We had issues with lighting, so instead you get the inside of my hotel room.
So it wasn't Pete's fault, it wasn't Matthew's fault, it was the light's fault.
Yes.
It was light. We've been on light.
It was nature.
To be fair, it's hard to predict.
Yeah, Younghoe Koo blames it on the turf monster, and we will blame it on the light monster.
Yeah. No one will ever finish Magnolia, Scott. Let's be clear about that. Come on, stop.
All right, it is a backup producer Pete day. As you could tell, it is 12:05, and we've gotten absolutely nowhere. We didn't even start till 12:02. Keep it open or close it out. We'll have all your start, sit answers today. We're going to be talking a little fantasy playoff strategy as a look ahead, and as we always do on Wednesdays, we close out the show with our Back to the Futures bets. But before we do any of that, we got to get into the Rotoworld Player news because we have plenty of it today. Starting with the Bucs getting not just Jalen McMillan back at practice, but welcome back Mike Evans. Mike Evans absolutely drinks for free today. It's great for an early return. We'll see ultimately when he is activated here, Jay, officially for a game. But this is a big shakeup in the Tampa Bay wide receiver room. Yep, absolutely. Great to get Mike Evans back. The 1,000-yard streak likely comes to an end, but great to have him back as the Bucs push for the glorious NFC South. Seems like he's been medically cleared. The clavicle seems like it's in better shape than expected. He's ahead of schedule. Jalen McMillan back as well.
it's a very interesting pass catching room now because Emeka Egbuka, as we've talked about and as we're going to get to, has really tailed off. He's getting a lot of targets, not really doing much with them. The catchable, converting the targets into catches has not worked out well. Chris Godwin had some moments as well.
Right.
So now you go from a couple of weeks ago it was Emeka Egbuka and not much else, and now you've got potentially 4 to 5 viable pass catching options. So how it shakes out, I still when Evans is right and fully and healthy and ramped up, I think that he'll be the number 1 pass catcher in the offense. Still have a Egbuka above Godwin until we see some more sustained performance from Godwin, but I think it just creates more uncertainty, and I think, Matthew, this just kind of builds upon Emeka Egbuka trending in the wrong direction in terms of his value.
Yeah, I mean, although the argument, though, the counter to that, Jay, is just that Emeka Egbuka actually probably was at his most productive at the beginning of the year when Evans was healthy. Evans played the first 3 weeks, drew a 29% target share. Like, they were looking for him a decent amount. Didn't translate into massive fantasy production because there weren't a lot of touchdowns, just 11.3 fantasy points per game. He was outside the top 30 on a points per game basis. But the fact of the matter is I see this full shot, and yeah, welcome to the beautiful amenities of right there.
Nice.
So I probably could have cleared that out before we started the show. Sorry, guys.
It could have been worse.
They're laughing. Yeah, exactly. Right. Exactly. Could have been. Anyway, but specifically about Mike Evans, I think I'm going to say remains to be seen. I think this is ultimately good news for Baker Mayfield. We're going to talk about him a little bit later in the show, and I think as teams are in the fantasy playoffs and as the Bucs ramp up, getting Evans back, I will say it's worth seeing if Mike Evans is available in your league. He's out there in about 30% of leagues. I looked at all my leagues. He was out there in about 2. He's not available in our league because, of course, I dropped him thinking he was out for the year and desperately needing the IR spot to try to manipulate my way back into the race, and we'll get to that in a second as well. But so yeah, RotoPad, of course, picked him up in our league as well. But he is out there in a handful of leagues, I think, especially leagues where there's short benches. So I think, listen, once Evans comes back, I think he's an immediate starter because he's Mike Evans. And I think it remains to be seen if there's a drop in Emeka Egbuka's production. I think he's too good for it to get much worse than it has been, right? I mean, I don't know. For me, so I'm going to say remains to be seen as if this is bad or potentially a positive for Egbuka.
Yeah, Matthew will likely not make the playoffs in the League of Arseholes, but his spirit or ghost will live on in the entities of Mike Evans and Jane Daniels, potentially on playoff teams after he dropped them.
Yeah, for future assets.
Yeah, for future assets in a redraft league.
We're rebuilding. We're in a rebuilding year, obviously. Yeah, absolutely.
Another bit of news here, guys. The Browns designated quarterback Deshaun Watson for return to practice. Is there any fantasy relevance here, Matthew, even if it's beyond the scope of Watson himself?
No.
Okay, noted.
I think that's a fair response.
No. When was the last? We have not seen Deshaun Watson be usable for fantasy outside of the Houston Texans. And that was many, many years ago.
Yeah.
There were at his best with the Browns, he was like QB 15. Like, he was a mid-tier QB 2 because he was running a little bit, back then. And the Browns feel like a mess. I don't know if Kevin Stefanski, 2-time Coach of the Year, Kevin Stefanski, not everyone knows that he won that second award, but he did. I don't know if 2-time Coach of the Year, Kevin Stefanski, is back with the Browns. Feels like maybe, a fresh start for all involved. I think Stefanski's a good coach, but it's just such a tough scene in Cleveland, and I can't imagine anyone starting Deshaun Watson this year. I'll give you just one example, and then we move off of this. I'm in a very deep dynasty league. Producer Damien is in that league with us as well. It's a 2-quarterback superflex league. So it's a 12-team, 25-man roster superflex dynasty league where and this week on waivers, Trey Lance went for $16. We have $100 fab in this league. Trey Lance went for $16. Deshaun Watson went for $3. Just to give you an idea,
right.
It's all, and that's a dynasty league that Damien and I are in with Field Yates and Mike Clay and Stephon Yabel and all of our old ESPN colleagues and friends, Daniel Dopp, and a lot of the producers that we worked with at ESPN as well. It's a very competitive, smart league, and the fact that Watson was out there and literally went for $3 this week, I think tells you all you need to know.
Yeah.
And I wasn't like, oh man, I should have been 4. You know, I was just like, whatever.
Yeah, as it pertains to his value for this season, I mean, it's a parlay that needs to hit. 1, he needs to actually be healthy enough to be able to play.
Right.
2, he needs to be able to supplant Shedeur Sanders as the starter. And then 3, he needs to have to play at a level that he hasn't played at in 5 years. So, like, the odds of that parlay hitting are pretty astronomical. So I think it's largely irrelevant for fantasy purposes.
Yeah, the Browns don't always make the right decision, but they need to take the low-hanging fruit and see what they have in their young quarterbacks. You're getting nothing from watching Deshaun Watson play this year, but Shedeur Sanders, you'd like to see what he could do, just like they gave Dylan Gabriel some run as well. All right, guys, the next bit of news, talk about goes from the past here. The Steelers claim Adam Thielen on waivers, Jay, after a trade that did not work out, bringing him back to Minnesota. He's released. The Steelers looking for basically any warm bodies in the wide receiver room.
Yeah, I think, look, here's the thing, is that the Vikings gave up real stuff for Adam Thielen. And if he could play, I think he would have been out there.
That's exactly right.
So that is a bad indicator. Now, I understand that there's not a lot of competition in terms of the wide receiver room for the Steelers. When we look at, DK Metcalf has had an underwhelming season relative to expectations. Calvin Austin's been injured and hasn't done much when he's been out there. But the problem is that it's very likely that Adam Thielen doesn't have a lot left. He's going to be, at absolute best, the number 2 wide receiver in this offense behind DK Metcalf. And then he's in an offense with a suspect quarterback, a team that loves to run the ball, a team that has an infatuation with throwing to tight ends. So in what world does Adam Thielen return fantasy value, even as a desperation flex type? I'm not sure. The Steelers, they claimed him for a reason to give him a shot, but I think he is much more in the kind of Robert Woods phase of his career than being able to be fantasy relevant.
Yeah.
I have a slightly contrarian take here, Jay. I think you're likely right in terms he's unlikely to produce fantasy value unless you're sort of in a deep league. But I do think that I hold out a flicker of a hope that maybe in a deep league that he could potentially be usable if in a full PPR league. And the idea that he's completely done and sort of to your point, the Bobby Trees version of his life at the moment, I'm not convinced that's the case. It might be, but in terms of Minnesota, he asked for his release. I think he saw the writing on the wall, which is this is a passing game that is not really going anywhere. They can't get the ball to, I don't know that we can judge Adam Thielen's, doneness or not based on the Minnesota passing game. Justin Jefferson isn't doing anything in Minnesota these days, right? Neither is Jordan Addison. So it's hard to say Adam Thielen's done because he wasn't able to get anything done with the Vikings. He asked for his release from the Vikings, a longtime player, fan favorite. They love him there. I think they know there's not enough passing volume to go around. So they graciously said, sure, you can, go sign with a team. I think Thielen was hoping to be, picked up by a Super Bowl contender. I'm not sure that the Steelers are, but when you think about this Steelers offense, you're absolutely right. Does it produce a lot of fantasy points for wide receivers? It doesn't, right? They're 32nd in the NFL. There's no team in the NFL worse than the Steelers in wide receiver target share. They just don't throw a lot as well, and there's been only 3 times this entire year that a Pittsburgh wide receiver not named DK Metcalf has even scored 12 fantasy points in a game. So I get all that, but I just sort of think here's Aaron Rodgers who likes to throw it short, who likes to get rid of it quickly, and you've got a veteran slot receiver who's going to be near the line of scrimmage. And could you see some PPR cheat code, old school Wan'Dale Robinson type production, not the touchdowns, but just literally, 7 for 40 yards kind of production from Adam Thielen, some Zach Ertz type production, if you will, from Thielen, just because he's a veteran, Rodgers is a veteran. They'll have a quick shorthand. Anyway, I'm not rushing the waiver wire to pick him up. I did grab him in that same dynasty league I just mentioned, 12 teams, 25-man rosters, because there's no one. I'm well, maybe. You never know. Who knows? Maybe down the stretch there's something, But so I'm not ready to say Adam Thielen's done, I guess is my way of saying it. And I do think there's the slimmest of chances that Thielen provides some, scammy PPR production in a deep league.
Okay.
Down the stretch.
So note it for the record that Matthew Berry has attached his good name to Adam Thielen. Look, I get all that, and I get the J.J. McCarthy aspect. My only pushback would be, we can move off Adam Thielen. But
the chat cannot believe the amount of time we have spent on him and Deshaun Watson.
My only pushback would be
move
that
on.
I get the J.J. McCarthy stuff. He also didn't do anything with Carson Wentz. And Wentz was able actually to, put up some passing yards and give Justin Jefferson some value. Against the Bengals in week 3, Thielen played 45 snaps. Jefferson went 5 for 75. Thielen didn't have a catch. So I think he's done. He may not be done. Maybe there's some fountain of youth in Pittsburgh, but yeah, I wouldn't be counting on greatness from Adam Thielen.
I can't let this segment go. So one more quick funny thing. This tweet is from Sunday from Seth Rorabaugh. Mike Tomlin will say something like, "We can't eat soup with forks. We need spoons." Then the Steelers will sign a 2018 Pro Bowler to the practice squad. This tweet was on Sunday. What did the Steelers do this week? Well, they added a 2018 Pro Bowler in Adam Thielen. And what did we do? We spent the first 20 minutes of the show talking about him. Let's get to keep it open or close it out. We go back to the Bucs with Baker Mayfield. Some help on the way for Baker Mayfield, but it has not been good for him. Only one game with 17-plus points since week 7, Matthew. Can you continue to start Baker Mayfield?
No, I'm going to close it out. I'm excited for him to get Mike Evans back, but this particular week against the Saints, I get it. You're like, oh, the Saints, he should light them up. And maybe we've seen that before, but look, they're just not right. Like, since week 7, he's quarterback 22 on a points per game basis, right? 2 games. Literally, there's been only 2 games out of the 6 in that stretch where he's been better than QB 18. And believe it or not, I think maybe it's because teams are so successful at running the ball against them, or they're getting short fields because the offense is turning the ball over. But the Saints are actually a top 7 pass defense so far this season. They're allowing under 190 passing yards a game. Again, I think that's somewhat circumstantial, but still, it's just Baker's not running. He's clearly banged up, and the offense just doesn't seem right. Having Bucky Irving come back makes me feel like they lean on the run game a little bit more. And so I have Baker Mayfield at QB 18 this week. He's a closeout out for me.
Yep, I agree there. As you look at how Matthew has Baker, quarterback 18, in between Marcus Mariota and Tyrod Taylor, Baker Mayfield, who was everyone's MVP after 6 weeks, and I think justifiably so to an extent. I think the issue with Baker is that I don't think he's played a good game since week 6. What are you giggling about, Connor?
Okay, Gemma in the chat said, next segment we will discuss Mercedes Lewis' lack of involvement on the Broncos offense.
Oh, that's good.
It's an interesting idea.
At least we lean in.
Backup producer Pete. We're switching up segment 2. Good suggestion.
All right.
Sorry.
Yeah, anyway.
I really railroaded your point.
Baker Mayfield,
Baker
Mayfield, no good. He's banged up. No, he's good, but he's banged up. So, yeah, you can look elsewhere. As you can see, he's behind Marcus Mariota in the rankings. It's not good for Baker.
Yeah. All right, our running back to kick things off with Kenneth Walker against the Falcons. This is a stat that's not going to surprise anybody. He scored 1 touchdown in his last 9 games here, Jay. Kenneth Walker looks pretty good running the ball. They get down to the red area. It just feels like the lack of touchdowns have completely limited his ceiling, where you do wonder, can you continue to play him?
Yeah, I still am going to play him. He still had 13 carries for 56 yards against the Vikings. This Falcons rush defense, we've talked about a lot of the time. It's not particularly imposing. Jonathan Taylor had 1 million yards against them in Berlin recently. And I wonder, Connor, if what Brian Flores did against the Seahawks is going to be the blueprint going forward for how to play this team, where, like, the way that they defended JSN, I haven't seen that in a long time. Like, they were literally face guarding JSN with cloud coverage over the top. It was like deep cut. It was like Iman Shumpert in the finals guarding Klay Thompson. Just face guarding him, not looking at anyone else. 2015 finals, go back, watch the tape. Iman Shumpert did a very good job on Klay. But I wonder if teams are just going to sell out to stop JSN and just force the Seahawks to run the ball. Because the Seahawks, they run the ball a lot, but they didn't do it super efficiently.
No.
But, and look, it's a favorable matchup as well against the Falcons. So I would be keeping it open on Kenneth Walker. The Seahawks touchdown favorites here. They should have game script.
I feel like if that happens, it can limit JSN, but Kubiak will find ways to get him the ball. But you're right. And Flores he's as good as game planning as anyone. Like, he can just throw in wrinkles that other people don't. This one from Will Garrettson. Ken Walker or Amarian Hampton in his first game back PPR? What do you think of that start-sit dilemma, Matthew?
Yeah, it's a tough one, obviously, because we just don't know. We just don't know if they'll ever give the ball to Ken Walker in close, and exactly how much does Hampton get a full-time rollback, or does Kamani Vidal sneak in there? I have Walker like 4 spots higher than Hampton so far this week. I'm keeping it open just to bring it back to our segment. So I would go with Walker over Hampton in the first game back here, although I have both inside my top 20, obviously. But look, 3 straight games with a snap rate above 50%. Like his 2 highest target shares of the season have come in the last 2 weeks. So they're starting to involve him in the passing game a little bit more. And it's a nice matchup with the Falcons. They've allowed at least 15 fantasy points to an opposing running back in 3 of the past 4 games. There's always the threat of Charbonnet getting into the end zone, but it does feel like, and it's weird. It's weird, like they use Walker up until they get there, and then it just, I don't know if it's luck or design, but probably a little bit of both in terms of why Charbonnet keeps getting these touchdowns. But I think Walker's the better back. I think Seattle thinks Walker's the better back, and I like the matchup. So I'm keeping it open on Walker as an RB2 this week.
Our next running back, Jaylen Warren, huge game. Steelers, Ravens, both even right now, and they'll play each other twice down the rest of this stretch. For Jaylen Warren, Matthew, he gets touches, but he's RB29 in points per game over the past 4 weeks. He just hasn't been as effective as we're used to seeing him with all those touches.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, and the Steelers haven't been as good. The offense hasn't been good, but, they just signed Adam Thielen. I don't know if you guys are aware of that, and I think that gives them a
Heard he's
boost.
making a big impact.
Should we talk about the impact that Adam Thielen's going to have on Jaylen Warren? That's one thing we failed to mention in our 20 minutes. We didn't really talk about what effect Thielen will
It's
bring.
like when the Pistons traded for Rasheed Wallace when they won the title in 2004. This is the missing piece for the Steelers.
That's right. I was pretty sure today that I wasn't getting an Amon Shumpert or Rasheed Wallace.
That's the beauty of this.
5 million to 1 cashes.
Exactly. Listen, I'm keeping it open on Jaylen Warren, though, because I think that the touchdowns haven't been there. The scoring equity hasn't been there as well. But they're trying to do it, right? They're trying to – he's in terms of team's percentage of red zone rushes, Jaylen Warren is top 10. Had an 18% target share last week, which was one of the highest of the year for him. He's had at least 15 touches in 5 of the past 6 games that he's fully completed. Remember, he left that one early due to injury, but so he's getting the work. A little too much Kenneth Gainwell for our taste, but you see it there on your screen. Going up against Baltimore, this is going to be a hard-fought game. It always is between the Ravens and the Steelers. I think they're going to, like always, they're going to want to run the ball. Ravens defense is a lot better these days, but Warren, because of his passing game usage, because he's out there, because it's not like Rodgers, is doing much else. I'm reluctantly keeping it open on Jaylen Warren. I am as a top 20 play. I think he's a low-end RB2 this week.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, what's the alternative? They're going to have Rodgers drop back 45 times? Rodgers is one of the multiple quarterbacks right now playing with fractured bones and did not look good against Buffalo. So I think they just got to continue to lean into the run. Baltimore's rush defense is fine, not particularly imposing, though. Ranks middle of the league in terms of success rate, EPA against. So, yeah, Jaylen Warren, again, not particularly inspiring, but I think an RB2 type.
All right, guys, a more difficult running back to project than Jaylen Warren. Woody Marks against the Chiefs on Sunday Night Football. Maybe not as difficult, Jay, when you hear that he's got 3 straight games with under 8 points. And I feel like that was the turning point where, Woody Marks is here, it's going to be time, and there's just been nothing going. And the volume is typically there, but not a lot of touchdowns or big plays and limited pass game work. Yeah,
it's funny that he's playing the Chiefs because I think that his closest facsimile in the league in a way is Kareem Hunt, just without the touchdowns, where Kareem Hunt, it's same with Woody Marks. Woody Marks looks good. He always looks good out there. It's just that good is like fighting ahead for 4 or 5 yards behind a suspect offensive line. No one works harder for 4 or 5 yard gains than Woody Marks and Kareem Hunt. But in terms of rush yards allowed to running backs, the Chiefs in the defense is in the top 5 fewest, right next to the Texans, who they'll play on Sunday Night Football. So Woody Marks, I mean, you're just counting on the touchdowns, and it's not an explosive offense. It's not a team that you expect to put up 30 plus. Just his games, I always feel like it's going to be 14 for 62 and no touchdowns.
Yeah, it's an absolute grind, Matthew. I mean, I would think that you're leaning more on closing this one out after 3 games like this.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I agree with Jay. Like, talent-wise, to the eye test, the guy looks good. But production-wise, it's just not there. You saw it on your screen. It's a tough matchup against Kansas City. 5th fewest rush yards allowed to opposing running backs. But you hinted at this, Connor. Like, they're not using him in the passing game. That's what's so weird is this is a guy that came out of college. That was his game, right?
Yes, that was his whole skill set. And that's how they started to work him in over the summer. And now he's, by default, just had to be their lead back.
Yeah, but the problem is without the passing game work and without the touchdowns, because it seems they do seem to prefer Nick Chubb when they get in close, or Nico Collins on a reverse. The fact is that he's just not getting that work. 23 receiving yards over his past 5 games. Like, not per game, Like, that's his total. Over the last 5 games, Woody Marks has 23 receiving yards. This is an unbelievable stat. But over the past 3 weeks, there is no running back among qualified running backs. There's no qualified running back that is worse in fantasy points per touch than Woody Marks. He is dead last. And so, yes, I am closing it out. He's my running back 28. We like Woody Marks. It's just, I don't know. This is a tough matchup, and the usage hasn't been there that makes you think he's going to get the fantasy production that we want.
Let's get to the pass catchers. We talked about Emeka Egbuka with the return of Mike Evans at the top of this show. But for this week specifically, Matthew, against the Saints, can you continue to roll Egbuka out there? I find it hard to believe people will have so many better options or a surplus of options. But he does have one game with 10-plus points since week 6.
It's been, I get it. And if like I'm in a league and I see somebody has Egbuka on their bench, I get it. I'm reluctantly keeping it open here as well, though. Listen, he's had 6 straight games with 8 or more targets. Like, we believe in Emeka Egbuka's talent, right? We believe in this kid from Ohio State. And so, the fact of the matter is over the last 6 games, he's got basically a 30% target share. And just, I think, again, Baker's been off. The offense has been a little bit out of sync. But you're just telling me, a guy with that kind of talent's getting 8 targets. I know that he's gotten it. The production hasn't been there, but I'm keeping it open. I'm reluctantly keeping it open as a borderline wide receiver 2-3. You see it there on your screen. He's my number 8 wide receiver this week. So he's right there in the mix on the kind of 2-3 border.
And Jay, I mean, the reality is too, a lot of wide receivers are banged up or dealing with horrible quarterback play right now that, once again, because of the usage, the target share that Matthew hinted, maybe there's a floor, at least with Egbuka, that a lot of guys in this range might not have.
Yeah, I would keep it open on Egbuka as well, just because of the targets, because of the favorable matchup against the Saints. You just need one breakdown. Baker is throwing it his way. He hasn't lost confidence, which is promising. The concern is that Egbuka, since week 6, to your point, he's had basically one good game. He's 69th. In PFF grade among wide receivers. It just doesn't feel like the player who is kind of having this magical run the first 5 weeks of the season. Have you noticed anything different about Egbuka and the way that he's being played?
Well, to that grade, they're going to hammer you pretty hard on drops.
Yeah.
And he's had some, and I have no problem with that.
Yeah.
That should hammer your grade, and he's had some big drops. So I think that's it, Matthew, where you look at it, maybe the glass half full is Baker's still looking his way, and if you finish half of those plays, we're not having this conversation. But the glass half empty is that something that is going to continue going forward? I would think it doesn't, personally. Like, I think this slump is going to break, but there are the 2 ways of looking at it.
There's no question about it. Like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if, again, I'm not looking at somebody sideways if he gets benched in a league that I'm in, but, the premise of the segment is, are you keeping it open or closing it out? And I'm reluctantly keeping it open on Egbuka. I don't know that you're going to have many better options. Again, talented wide receiver getting 8 targets in a decent matchup against the Saints. It's going to be tough to beat, I think, for most people on their rosters.
How about this from Raise the Flags? Egbuka or Mike Evans if Mike Evans is active?
Evans.
Yeah, I think.
Evans, because as
Go
well,
Old Faithful.
The nature of the injury too, like it's not like he's coming back off a knee or a bad ankle. Yeah, it's like he broke his collarbone and bone's healed. And Mike Evans knows the offense. Baker Mayfield is very in tune with Mike Evans. So, yeah, I think it's Mike Evans there.
The next one, I don't think we'll share the same confidence in here, Matthew. Brian Thomas Jr. against the Colts right now. This matchup is fine. There's nothing wrong with it, especially Sauce Gardner's not going to play in this game. Not put on IR yet, but not going to play in this game. But 28 receiving yards in his first game back last week, and this has just been a very, very disappointing season across the board.
His lack of production this year has been shocking, and I don't know if it's just not on the same page with Trevor Lawrence. Of course, so much of his production last year down the stretch came with Mac Jones, whether it's unfamiliarity or with Liam Cohen's offense or just not a fit for what Liam wants to do. He has been banged up this year, but the production wasn't there prior to the injury, so you can't really say yes, he didn't produce, but he was hurt. He didn't produce. He's had one game this year, literally one game this year with more than 12 fantasy points. Last week, he ran 84% of the routes and still only earned 12% of the targets. Just think about that. just 12% target share. I mean, he was out there, right? I mean, and this is a game that Parker Washington left early. And he's not only is he not earning targets at a high rate, he's definitely not earning them when you get in close. He's got one red zone target over his past 7 games. Literally one red zone target, not even an end zone target, literally one red zone target in his last 7 games that he's played. So, yes, I'm closing it out on Brian Thomas Jr. He's outside my top 30 this week, and he is in the running for biggest bust of the year, I think, fantasy-wise, based on where he was drafted and his production. Again, because I don't think you can sort of blame you can't blame his lack of production on injury the way you can some other players. Whatever. Jaden Daniels, I think you can blame on injury, right? Like, he's been banged up basically, most of the year.
Yep, no, I agree. Brian Thomas Jr. and Kendrick Bourne, the only 2 Mac Jones merchants in NFL history. I think it's a relatively favorable matchup against the Colts. Question here from MDD0101. Drop BTJ for Evans. Yes, I'd rather have Mike Evans going forward. I think that's
without a doubt. I'm at the point where with Brian Thomas Jr., Jay, that are they just going to trade him this offseason? I'd almost take that side than against it, which is wild to say. Yeah. It just feels like it's just not working with Liam Cohen and this offense as a whole.
And they have a million wide receivers as well.
Travis Hunter will be back.
They've obviously invested resources in trading for Jacoby Myers. Parker Washington's a real player.
They throw Brent Strange all the time.
They have players there. So, I don't know what happened to Brian Thomas Jr. We came into the season, it's like a fringe first-round pick in fantasy. So it's very strange. This is a reasonable spot to get right, I think. Certainly, Sauce Gardner Island is much more imposing than Mekhi Blackman Island. And so the Colts' corners are looking a little bit more shaky than it was a week ago. Colts also very little pass rush. It's Laiatu Latu and then just, pray, basically. Right. They're getting very little pressure. So Brian Thomas Jr., the reality is he's had more than 5 catches once this season. So I just don't think you can count on this guy at all.
How about Troy Franklin, Matthew? 2 games with more than 40 receiving yards since week 5. Sean Payton, we always make jokes about his backfield usage. That's starting to carry over to the wide receiver room as well as Pat Bryant gets more involved.
Yeah, Pat Bryant ran 5 more routes than Troy Franklin last week. 67% route rate last week. That's his lowest since week number 1. And so it's just sort of all over the place. And a game in which the Broncos were, it was kind of a crazy game against my Commanders, going back and forth as well. The problem is that Troy Franklin is really touchdown dependent. And who among us isn't? But in the games in this year in which he hasn't scored, he's averaging 7 fantasy points a game, right? He's had 40 or fewer receiving yards in 6 of his last 8 games. And he's been bailed out by the touchdowns, which is always an opportunity there. But they just spread the ball around so much, and they use so many different pieces of their offense. It's hard to trust Troy Franklin. If you start him, you're basically banking on a touchdown against the Raiders, which could happen easily. Obviously, the Raiders have struggled so far this year, but he's my wide receiver 40. I'm closing it out on Troy Franklin.
All right, and our tight end on the board is to see Troy Franklin beyond household names like Jordan Addison, who's barely seen the ball in weeks, Romeo Doubs, Devon Vele, and Xavier Worthy. So tough times for Troy Franklin. Our tight end is Kyle Pitts this week. Last week was his first game with more than 8 points since week 8, Jay. The Jets defense will do that. Tight ends have had big performances against them this week. But he's got Seattle on deck, who also is not great against the tight end.
Yep, so I think you keep it open on Kyle Pitts, which is a strange thing to say out loud. We'll see Drake London and his health, and that'll change the state of the offense. But ultimately, you cannot run the ball on Seattle. Their rush defense is completely dominant. I know the Falcons will try because that is what they're going to need to do. But regardless, 8 targets in that full game. Kirk Cousins looked a bit better than expected. I thought he looked completely done in the Miami game initially, but he's been serviceable the past 2 weeks.
Some throws.
Yeah, made some throws. Right. Is a good way to put it, Connor. He's been able to make some throws of the football. No, it doesn't move, and they don't have a ton of zip on them. But he has been able to. He was able to get Kyle Pitts 82 receiving yards. So I think that in this tight end landscape, that Kyle Pitts is startable. He's at the lower end of startable, but I would keep it open, Matthew.
Jay, I agree with you. I'm a tight end 8, so lower end of startable, but still a tight end 1. I am keeping it open. You mentioned the targets last week. 23% target share since week 7. That's, one of the highest among all tight ends over the last, handful of weeks. And it's actually not a scary match against Seattle. As good as Seattle is in all aspects of the defense, Connor, but you referenced it. Seahawks, are not good against tight ends. They've given up the 3rd most receiving yards per game to opposing tight ends. They've given up double-digit fantasy points to a tight end in 3 of the past 4 games. So, Kyle Pitts, come on down. I'm keeping it open. on Kyle Pitts. Kirk Cousins to Kyle Pitts. Those are your Atlanta Falcons. Word up.
I'm sure this is going to go great. 3 for 17 coming up.
Yeah.
Joshua, yep. Pitts or Kincaid against the Bengals?
Kincaid if he's healthy for me. But
If he's healthy.
Yeah.
The Bengals have been
that's right.
the feast of all feasts for tight ends this year.
Yeah.
Hunter Henry had like 26 points.
Yeah.
Against
There's a bit of a discourse that the Bengals defense with Joe Burrow has gotten better because they kept the Ravens to 14 points. The Ravens had 5 turnovers in the game. Yeah, if the Bengals can generate 5 turnovers every game, they'll be fine. But one of those turnovers also came at the 1-inch line, so that should get them to 21 points. This is still the worst defense in football.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm not going to buy into that. We do have one more name for keep it open or close it out. Another tight end. Broncos tight end Mercedes Lewis. He's got a great matchup this week, Matthew, against the Raiders. You know, people are talking about the big dog. I think he's 40 years old right now. Can you give him one more ride here with Mercedes Lewis?
And see, now, I know Jay wants to say he's done as well, but you sort of think about what Mercedes Lewis is doing here. You know, Geno Smith likes the veteran player. It's a nice matchup. As well, yeah.
Streamer.
I can't even do it. I can't even do it with a straight
He played
face.
20 snaps last time they played
He's
the
out
Raiders.
there. Yeah, he's kind of a 6th offensive lineman.
Yeah,
Like,
well,
it
he
is-
has a 26
it
pass
is,
blocking
like-
grade.
Well, I take that back.
By the way, he might be older than 40. Like it's like death taxes and Mercedes Lewis. He's always out there. Like it's just he will never go away.
He's actually dead.
41 and turning 42 in May.
I mean, there you go.
Yeah.
Told you.
So
Older than. Yeah.
good for Mercedes Lewis. Brandon De La Torre, I love this show. We love that you love this show. We're here for the laughs. A smidge of fantasy advice with lots of laughs. Let's recap, keep it open or close it out. Baker Mayfield, a top 20 play, but he's a close. He is not in QB1 territory after this slump he's been on. Kenneth Walker stays open at RB16, as does Jaylen Warren at RB18. But Woody Marks ends up a close at RB28. Just not a lot of production despite volume. Emeka Egbuka, you probably don't have a better option, so he stays open based on target share at wide receiver 18. Brian Thomas Jr., though, you can close that one out at wide receiver 33. It just hasn't happened this year. And Troy Franklin trending the wrong way in recent weeks. He's wide receiver 40 as the Broncos give Pat Bryant more work, so Franklin's a close. And our tight end, Kyle Pitts, is an open. Top 10 play. Tight end 8. Good matchup against Seattle. All right, we're taking our first break. When we're back, can Matthew actually go from 0-7 to the playoffs
Please,
in our
God,
fantasy
no.
league of assholes? We really hope not. Back after.
Michael Wilson is a member of Live at Noon on the Tube, by the way, on a 5-game win streak. I defeated Roto Pat, and Michael Wilson has been a part of that. I play backup producer Pete in what is my Super Bowl.
Who stinks, by the way. He's the worst 6-6 I've ever seen.
There's no question. But
Jay had his fourth stringers in against him running up to score 100 points last night.
Beat him by 100. But Jay benched his players at halftime and still beat him by 100. But make no mistake, like, again, I'm piecing it together. Like, I'm starting like Harold Fannin as a flex. Like, my team is so decimated by injury, so I'm piecing it together. But I managed to get it every week. It's sort of, and Michael Wilson has been a part of it. Backup producer Pete is favored, but we've been underdogs in 5 straight, so we'll see what happens. He is. Look at the projections. He's favored.
Yes, Matthew's hot streak continues. As we take a look at the League of Assholes playoff picture, it pains me to say, Matthew and I are both 6-7, as is backup producer Pete. Now the point differential a little different.
I'm in. Yeah.
You're in.
I'm in.
Yeah, Lawrence surging. Damian always pretty good. Not surprised there. Stupid Dev. For all the jokes we make about Dev, it's like karma kind of kicked in. His point total is the worst of the playoff teams, but he's 8-5. So good for Stupid Dev. Producer Steven, kind of the shock there. Go ahead, Matthew.
Yeah. I was just gonna say I needed Roto Pat to lose last week. He didn't. I needed Stupid Dev. Stupid Dev actually lost to Roto Pat, I believe, and so I needed Stupid Dev to finally win a game last week, and of course he didn't, because then he would have been him and Steven. I needed both those two teams to lose to be 6-7 for me to have a real shot here, and then I could have potentially snuck in if I win next week and I'm 7-7, and a lot of the 6-win teams like go to 6-8. Then I sneak in because I knew the points just aren't there. Again, between Jayden Daniels and Mike Evans and Xavier Worthy and the slow start Chase Brown, the excuser is in full effect. But make no mistake, even though I think I have to outscore Steven by 176 points or something.
I got all the scenarios. Don't worry.
Go ahead. How do I make the playoffs?
Hold on. First of all, I didn't realize that backup producer Pete has actually written a manifesto of every single clinching scenario, as though this is the AFC South. If Indianapolis, Jacksonville, and Houston are all tied at the end of the season, this is unbelievable.
Well, I'll explain Matthew's. Matthew clinches with a win over Denny, and he needs either, very likely scenarios, Steven loses, plus Matthew outscores Steven by 176 points, plus I lose. Or Matthew outscores me by 98 points. Or Rotopat loses. Matthew outscores Rotopat by 164 points, plus I lose. Or Matthew outscores me again by 98 points, plus he outscores Pete by 68. There's a chance. It's a non-zero. It can happen.
Yes, we play this league on ESPN, and it gives me a 2% chance of making the playoffs.
Nice,
which seems high.
Yeah, I don't know where they came up with those odds.
It reminds me of, was it Joe Flacco? Joe Flacco when he threw the 4th and 29 to Ray Rice against the Chargers. Was that right?
He made like 40 people miss.
Yeah, it's like that except it's 4th and 58. Yeah, basically. Yeah, so it's like 4th and 58. Ray Rice needs to go for 59 yards.
Which is true, and I mean, Connor, if you beat Dev, and then you have a bunch of different scenarios for you to make it, you need producer Steven to lose, and you need to outscore Jay by 78, or you need Rotopat to lose, and you outscore Rotopat by 66. It's unbelievable in terms of what needs to happen. But I think the most important thing is, there'll be no math. Here's the most important thing: I was 0-7, and I'm a game away from finishing the year at 7-7. That's the most important thing. I beat backup producer Pete. Everyone that's come in front of me, I've defeated. I put it together with. I have done, despite the fact that I'm a 2-time champion of this league, I would argue I've actually done the best coaching of my life this year to bring us back to even have it. The fact, yes, I agree with you. We're not making the playoffs. Asked and answered.
You cut Jayden Daniels and Mike Evans. How's that good coaching?
My point, I had a bad draft, obviously, that some guys didn't produce and some guys got injured. Xavier Worthy missed the first 5 weeks. Mike Evans out after week 3. Jayden Daniels been awful, my first round pick. And Chase Brown was unusable for the first 7 weeks. That's like my first 5 picks. But what I'm going to say is that, so coming back from 0-7 is my best coaching. I've been piecing it together with like the Michael Wilsons of the world, and what I would tell you here, Jay, is that even though the fact that I've 2% chance of making the playoffs, and even if the real odds are even lower than that, the fact is, as we sit here on the week before the playoffs start, I actually have a chance. It's infinitesimal, but the fact that I started 0-7 and we enter week 14 with me having a legit chance, or a chance, not even legit, but I started 0-7, and in week 14 I actually have a chance to make the playoffs is unbelievable. It's a disgrace to the rest of you. Once again, how dare you? I gave you a 7-game head start. I gave all of you a 7-game head start, and you could not kill me. You could not kill me. It's outrageous.
What are you, King Lear? What's this soliloquy? We get it.
You want to go back to talking about Adam Thielen? We can do that too.
I've never been more disappointed with my coworkers. Yeah. All of you. All of you. Just an absolute awful effort. Yeah. Anyways, we did promise.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did promise some playoff strategy right now. We're going to start with the defense special teams, for those of you that still have those in your leagues. Some of you have already clinched a playoff spot and are looking towards your playoff matchups. These are defense special teams that are owned in less than 50% of leagues that have favorable playoff schedules. Guys, we will each pick one kind of in draft format, so we won't repeat any. And Matthew, after your tough fantasy year, we'll give you the first pick here. Which one of these 5 would be your go-to for the stretch run as you see the schedule for each as well?
Give me the Saints. You know what I mean? Wow. Again, Carolina, I know they just had the nice game, but they're, it's still it's a low passing volume offense, so they're not going to run up a bunch of points on you. Obviously, the Jets are fun. Tyrod's not scared to throw a pick or take a sack, and then obviously at Tennessee in Week 17. So I think it's between the Saints and the Bucs, but give me the Saints. Who dat?
Yeah, I'm going to take the Bucs because the matchup's fairly favorable. Atlanta, at Carolina, at Miami. Also, these options, I think they're just the best defense, full stop, even though they haven't played to a super high level this year. But I think Todd Bowles, with his blitzing, with his personnel, with the schedule, that would be my pick.
Slim pickings here for me, but I'll go with the Dolphins.
Yeah.
The matchup, the Dolphins defense, to their credit, has shown signs of life for a couple of weeks
teams
now.
Played hard.
Right. They were awful in September. Yeah. They are playing hard. They're better up front right now. They have the matchup against the Steelers here, which is one that you think would actually be a benefit to their defense, but then you got to deal with the Bengals and Bucs. So I agree with you guys. I'd go Saints and Bucs over them as well. And if you have any questions about the Giants, who we didn't get to, just know that Joe Shane, he'll understand your question.
Why do you believe that you're the right person to help turn this thing around?
Yeah, I understand the question. And I understand the question. And yeah, I understand the question there too, Pat. And yeah, I understand the question. And yeah, I understand your question. Again, I think somebody asked the same thing earlier, but if I understand your question.
It's very clear that Joe Shane was told that at a leadership meeting. That's a good way to respond to a question.
Buy yourself some time.
Listen, Joe, this is how you engage with people. It makes them feel like they're being heard. It's very bad. It's all very bad. Yeah,
I understand your question. I understand why you're asking it. I'm not going to give you an answer, but I do understand it. The reason I'm not giving you an answer you want to hear is not because of a lack of comprehension. I do understand the question.
That's bad.
All right, don't worry, everybody. We'll always understand.
Can I tell you a quick story here?
Yeah, this is a great time for it.
Yeah. So I'm just sitting here. I'm looking at myself. I'm whatever. I'm out of a suitcase. I'm in Orlando, whatever. So I'm, whatever. I'm wearing a T-shirt. Alabama, Roll Tide. We got a big game against Georgia on Saturday. But I'm sitting here and I'm noticing it's a little wrinkled, and I'm trying to stretch it out. It's just not working.
I don't think that approach is working. I would try a different approach.
Obviously. So
just go with the wrinkles.
Wrinkle release spray is the other approach.
Well, right.
It's like you're tensing like you're Ben Johnson.
I probably could have ironed the shirt before the show, but I didn't.
There's no chance you know how to work an iron. It's okay. You don't have to lie to the regulars.
That's exactly right, Jay. I don't. And my wife was like, no, I'm not doing that. And, she pieced out. So, and I don't blame Beth for doing that. But it reminded me of a story. Do you guys remember Merrill Hodge?
Yeah.
ESPN analyst for many, many years, Pittsburgh Steelers legend. So Merrill Hodge, great guy. And so I worked with Merrill when I first got to ESPN for a number of years, and we would do segments together and stuff like that. Awesome guy. And I don't know if you remember, for people that can think about what Merrill looked like, but Merrill, is ripped. Still to this day, right? But, he's just, he's a guy, and, he always had these awesome ties with the big knots. And it always looked like he was about ready to burst out of his shirt. You know what I mean? It was always just his shirts were always super tight and just always pressed really thin and looked great. I remember talking to Merrill one time. I'm like, hey man, how do you get your shirts to look like that? That's so awesome. How do you look? How can I do that? And he took a look at me and he goes, bench press. Listen, it's there's no laundry secret, dude. Just get to the gym.
No more detail.
Sad sack, yeah. And I've never forgotten that. I'm like, yeah, you're probably right. Just because he's in great shape, you're right. That would have been the answer. It's not a laundry thing. It's not a starch thing. It's just bench press.
Oh dear. And then you didn't do it.
Yeah, I'm glad you followed his advice, Matthew. That's the best part of the story.
Obviously, it seemed like a lot of work. I was hoping it was just like a spray or something.
We got Valiant Vincent weighing in. Wait, yeah, Barry would need to know how to iron a shirt. LOL.
Yeah, I don't.
And that is exactly right. All right, we're going to take our last break. When we're back, we got our Back to the Futures bets last call right after this. DraftKings Sportsbook is an official sports betting partner of the NFL, and new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if your bet wins. Download the app and use promo code FFHH when you sign up. DraftKings Sportsbook, the crown is yours.
Crown is yours.
All right, guys, it's time for Back to the Futures. Jay, what's in the crystal ball?
Going to take the Fighting JJ McCarthy's under 5.5 wins at plus 160. So take a look at their schedule. Commanders this week, that's about a coin flip in the market. And then at Cowboys, at Giants, Lions, Packers. I suspect they're going to lose those games against the Cowboys, Lions, and Packers. And then I need them to lose 1 out of 2 between the Commanders and at the Giants. And I think they will do that, Connor.
All right, I'm going with the Texans to win the AFC South, plus 310 right now. When you look at this division, The Colts are plus 140. Jacksonville is plus 145. They're both 8-4, and they both play each other twice. The Texans, they're plus 310 at 7-5. If they beat the Chiefs on Sunday Night Football, they have the Cardinals and the Raiders after that right now. So the Texans at plus 310 feels like a big number.
Yep, I agree. I think that should be closer to plus 210. I think that if they beat the Chiefs, they are very, very live to win that division.
Matthew, what do you got for us?
How about the Cardinals under 4.5 wins? Look at the Cardinals' upcoming schedule. They've got 3 wins right now, so they need 2 more wins the rest of the season. I don't see who they're beating on this team. They got the Rams, and they're at the Texans. Maybe they could squeak by the Falcons, but then they got to go at the Bengals against Joe Burrow and then at the Rams in Week 18. I think maybe they win one of the following games, but I don't think they win 2. So give me under 4.5 wins for the Cardinals at minus 105.
Wow. Jacoby Brissett slander to end the
Michael
show
Wilson
from Orlando.
telling him to retire.
What are the 2 games they win on that schedule there? Maybe they beat the Rams in Week 18 if the Rams rest everybody, but
I don't think the Rams will be in position
now
to rest people.
They need to win.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think they'll beat the Falcons, and then you need to win one of the other. It's not like they're a lock to beat the Falcons, but yeah, they would be tiny favorites in that game. And then the other 4, they'll be underdogs in all of them. And you have to, win a strange game against the Bengals or something.
Rams, Texans, I mean, maybe the Bengals, I guess, but give me Joe Burrow over Jacoby Brissett.
Just saddened by the Brissett slander and lack of faith.
Yeah, Brandon De La Torre said, there we have it. Barry hates Jacoby.
Yeah.
You hate to see it like this.
To be fair, Matthew, you might have Kyler Murray back for those final few games, in which case they'll definitely lose.
Galaxy braining that.
Yeah.
By the way, real quickly, your hopes of using Jaden Daniels in the playoffs, Jay, get better. Dan Quinn talking about the fact that he's optimistic he's going to get a lot of reps in practice. They'll take him off until Friday. He's off to a good start. Still not clear for practice, but just, they're starting to ramp him up.
All right, show us the ankles, Barry. The people want to see the ankles.
An ankler sign-off?
Oh, no. Can he let...
Oh, my God.
No
Does he even have pants on?
Oh,
That's it for us. The guys will be back tomorrow. For Matthew and Jay, I'm Connor. We're getting the hell out of here.